Welcome to New Hope Lutheran Church and Pastor Charlie's Toolbox. So today, I thought I'd talk about anchors, boat anchors specifically. And what anchors do is they hold a boat in its place. Although, even when the anchor's there, the boat can still swing around from one place to another a bit, but it's not going to be pushed way off by currents or winds or waves. It's great when you want to go fishing and you want to stay in one place, because otherwise, without anything to anchor the boat, it just drifts along wherever the wind and the current take it. So, when it comes to anchors, they're usually heavy. This is a 10-pounder. And you might think, well, it's heavy enough, so if I just drop it down to the bottom of the lake and leave it like that, it's going to be fine. But the thing is, when your line's like this and it's straight up, the anchor is not grabbing at the bottom of the lake. And that's very important for an anchor, that it grabs the bottom of the lake. If it's just like this, you could have waves lift the boat and they lift the anchor, and it keeps hopping along, and it's not doing its job. So when you anchor, you want to anchor and then let yourself back away from the anchor, and just let out line until you're about that kind of an angle, because the anchor then is pulled down and it digs into the bottom of the lake. Now, this particular anchor, it's called a mud anchor. It's not like ones you might normally see, which are fluke anchors or plow anchors that really they dig in. This is for mud. And the reason it's like a bowl is that it can gouge itself into the mud and hold you there. And when you pull it up, might notice it's got some holes sticking through here. And that's to let the water and mud out of this dish, because otherwise you're just pulling up a dish of mud. And the other anchor I've got here is a lightweight little thing. And it's handy because it's compact. It'll even fold up if you want it to. And this one, it's not really good for mud, because unless this sinks right in, if it's just goopy mud, it's just going to slide along. It's more for a hard bottom or a rocky bottom of a lake. And again, when you take it, these things drag and they catch and then they hold you. So the kind of anchor you use sometimes depends on the kind of bottom you have on your body of water. You know, some anchors, to help them, especially on big boats, you will notice anchors are connected with chains. And the reason for chains is that chains are heavy. They have weight to them. So when you got your anchor down, the anchor has weight to it, but the chain also has weight to it. And the chain doesn't necessarily have to be in a straight line. The chain might be like this. And that's okay, because it also helps hold the boat, but it also helps relieve tension on your anchor. Because when your boat goes up and down, the chain straightens out, takes up slack, and it's not adding any extra tension to your anchor. So if you see chains on an anchor, that's the reason why. Now, what else? When you want to unhook your anchor. You know now how to set it. When you want to unhook it, it's going to be like this, in the mud. And what you do is you either pull yourself or drive your boat towards the anchor. And you pull in the line. And when you get over the anchor, your boat will pull on it and pull it upwards like that, so it's straight. Where I said before, it's not holding anything, and you can just pull it up. This This one here is kind of an interesting gizmo on it, where the rope can slide. So when it's holding, it's good, and as you bring your boat towards it, this slides along there, and it just plucks the flukes out of whatever's been holding it. You're pulling it up this way. Kind of a cool idea too. Now, there's always difficulties with anchoring, because if you're not quite properly anchored, you might drag the anchor along the bottom of the lake as the waves are pushing on your boat or the wind is. Well, that's not a good thing, because you might be slow, but you may notice, hopefully before something bad happens, that you're not where you want it to be. Another problem that can happen is your rope or your chain can break, and then you're totally free, and who knows where you're going to wind up. I bring up anchors because I've been thinking a lot lately about how our lives are anchored. What do we anchor our lives to? What is it in our lives that's really important to us, that we hinge everything else on? What are you most proud of in life that you would never want to give up? What keeps you going during tough times? The thought that there's something there and I'm anchored to that, and that's going to keep me going. Some people, they feel that, well, my most important thing is to impress my friends and others with whatever. Some people feel that money is the most important thing, and they anchor their lives to it. Or some people just want to have more stuff than everyone else, and they anchor their lives to that. The problem with anchoring your life to something so earthly is that the anchor can drag, or the line can break, and you're going to be just left floating away. What do you do when that happens? Sometimes you need a different anchor. And that brings me to our lesson for today from Acts 9, 1 to 20 over here. We hear the story of a man named Saul. And Saul had anchored his life in persecuting Christians. And what that meant was Saul was in charge of a group of soldiers, and they would go around and they'd find Christians and they'd take them away, arrest them, and put them in jail. They were allowed to do that. And Saul was very good at it, and he was very persistent, and he was very determined. That's what his life was anchored to. His whole life was all about that. Trouble was, Saul's anchor broke one day when Jesus showed up in the heavens to him and asked him, "Why are you doing this? What are you doing this for?" Saul very suddenly realized that the anchor he'd been counting on, it wasn't holding at all. It wasn't the answer. It didn't give him meaning and purpose in life. And that's where Saul switched anchors. He renamed himself as the Apostle Paul. He started teaching about how Jesus was really the only anchor one needs to have in life. Jesus is the one you anchor your whole life to, and you count on it, and you can count on it. For Paul, he found that regardless of what happened to him in his life, he could always count on Jesus, even when he himself went to jail on a couple different occasions. His message then was a message that don't anchor your life to things that so many seem to feel important in this world. Anchor your whole life in Jesus, because that is what is going to keep you going and keep you safe and keep you anchored regardless of whatever problems